Well, hello everybody. Welcome to Unity Temple in the Plaza, a place where diversity is praised and peace and harmony are the rewards. I have a few brief announcements before we begin the streaming service today. And the first is the song you've been listening to is called The Preacher. And back in the day, right after I got ordained, I would go into some of the jazz joints, and some of my favorite people like Jim Mayer and Tim Whitmer were playing. And when I walked in, they'd start playing that song. It's always been very special to me. So for all the preachers out there that temporarily don't have an audience, that one was for you. At Unity Temple, we're still in a holding pattern. We are going to open the doors on May 15th only for support groups and private counseling for the emotional help that people need. All other activities will continue to be suspended until we get the go-ahead from our mayor and from our advisor and director, Dr. Deepika Polanani. We miss all of you, and some of you have sent in pictures of your smiling faces we'd like to look at now. We appreciate you, and it's so good to see you. Any of you out there would like to be featured in the next streaming service, please let us know, and you can see yourself up on the big screen. There you have it, friendly faces. Please join with me now as we begin our service with the temple chimes, the opening prayer, and Millie Edwards with the call to inspiration. Please join with me in saying this if you choose. On this day, we dedicate ourselves to peace on earth. We accept ourselves without harsh judgment and express appreciation for our individuality. We live without fear to meet the events of this day with confidence. We accept others without prejudice to experience a sense of wholeness with all people. We honor our earthly environment and recognize a oneness with all creation. In harmony with ourselves, our lives, other people, and all of nature, we live this day with a peaceful mind, a peaceful heart, and a peaceful spirit. Thank you, God. Amen.
In this very room, there's quite enough love for one like me. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for one like me. And there's quite enough hope and quite enough power to chase away any gloom. The Spirit, His Spirit is in this very room.
evening. Well, hello, everybody. It is my great pleasure to present to you this morning Dr. Deepika Polanini. And she has been our chief advisor and given us direction throughout this entire COVID-19 pandemic. She's here today to help guide us and to perhaps teach us some things that we don't know in regards to the lockdowns being on relief for a while and people going back out into the public and the cautions that must be made in order to avoid another uprising perhaps in the fall. So, Dr. Polanini, how are you today?
Duke, I'm thrilled to be here and talking with you again. Thank you for welcoming me.
Yes, I need you to clarify something for me. Is it Polanini or Polanine?
It's Polanini.
Polanini.
Yes.
Okay, I'll never forget that. So tell us, what is going on in our city and our country in regards to the pandemic?
So, as you know from our local guidance, the city and the country are slowly beginning to open again. I think that's one of the key messages to discuss today is really the idea of taking this slowly because there's still so much about this virus that we don't know. To speak to some of the things that we don't completely know, we still don't have an understanding as to whether having an infection with the virus actually makes you immune to a second occurrence with it. We don't completely understand how much or how quickly the virus can mutate. And we're still learning more about the ability to complete antibody testing to understand people who have been exposed versus those who have not. And so it's funny that we're talking about the unknown because part of what I hoped to talk to you about today was also dealing with uncertainty and ways to move forward despite the fear that uncertainty can bring.
Well, it's interesting you bring up fear. One of the principles we hold in unity is that whatever we're against in life weakens us. If we approach something negatively, or if we're on the attack, or we just try to resist what is happening, it actually weakens the entire body. Not just the mind that is disrupted, but the body as well. On the other hand, whatever we're for strengthens us. Now, between the weakness and the strength, and all that takes place in the arena of relationships. Relationships are everything. There is nothing we do on this earth or in this existence that doesn't involve us relating to somebody or something. It might be our higher power, we relate to God. It might be ourselves, our self-talk. It might be other people, other things, or it might be a creative relation, which we imagine or dream up. Now, in regards to weakening us, fear is the greatest weakener that there is. Because, as you said, it deals with the unknown. And we can't tell the difference between something real and something imagined in great detail if our mind is set on something that we believe. So tell me about fear and how you handle it.
Oh, well, how I handle it, we'll come to that part second. But I think there are so many incredible points that you raised just in those couple of minutes. I think that, it's a privilege to get to serve the community as a physician, and as you know, much of my time is actually focused as a scientist and in research, and so my efforts around COVID-19 right now are related to research to try to develop treatments to stop the progression of the infection so that people don't become critically ill and requiring ventilators and more. But all of this relates to several points, and in my opinion, there's so much that we don't understand in science and in medicine around the connection between the mind and the body. That is something that I firmly believe, and I do believe that our energy goes where our focus is. There are so many ways that we have around these phrases. Energy flows where focus goes. We have nothing to fear but fear itself. I think a lot of these things are really ways to keep our mind and our heart centered on the vision of what is possible. And that can be one of making it through this as a community and making it through this as individuals. One of the things that you touched on clearly was relationships. And I think that part of the way that I have dealt with the fear around this entire pandemic, because I don't think that fear has escaped most anyone, is curiosity. And that's one thing that is easier for me as a scientist to think about. Well, this is a really frightening thing that's occurring out in the public. And so there are several of us in health and in science that are trying to approach this with curiosity to understand what we can learn more about this virus or ways that we can try to mitigate it. But I think that that's not something that's exclusive to people in healthcare and in science. I think that this has been a tremendous time of examining relationships, our relationships with ourselves, our relationships with those whom we're sheltering in place with, children being homeschooled. I'm saying hi to my kids. Our partners, family members that we don't get to see as often, our relationships with our community as we try to support each other. And I think that you can replace fear, which can paralyze you from building on those relationships, with curiosity. How can I use this time to look inward more toward myself? How can I use this time to consider my relationships with those in my household? And how can I use this time to relate more with the community? We at Unity, I believe, have done an extraordinary job at replacing fear with curiosity. We find new ways to stream these services. It was incredible to watch Reverend Campbell Zooming from home. And I'm sure that that took curiosity with technology too. We've found new ways to feed individuals in our community. I think that this has been nothing short of a terrifying experience, as we don't know a lot about this virus and face a pandemic. But the things that we have discovered through curiosity and our ability to continue relating to each other, and most importantly with ourselves, that has been an extraordinary piece that has also come with this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Well, oftentimes I find myself in a fearful state, worried not only about myself and my family, but my friends, all the people that are part of Unity Temple in the Plaza. And when I get to a point where I feel I'm overworked by the fear, I simply ask myself, what is it I'm afraid of? Well, I'm afraid of I might get the virus. I'm afraid of I might get sick. I'm afraid I might affect somebody else. I'm afraid I might die. And those are all possibilities. But there's also the possibility that I could have a wonderful, strong body and live to be a ripe old age of I was going to say 70, but I passed that a couple years ago. So we'll move to 100. I could live to be 100. So when you move into the realm of potentiality, anything can happen. And whether we're immersed in fear, worrying about the worst, or immersed in a sense of calm and comfort, worrying about the best that can happen, and the present moment right here provides for us everything we need to have a comfortable and fulfilling life. Sitting here with you is a tremendous experience for me. And it wouldn't have happened if we wouldn't have had this pandemic.
And I owe you thanks for the ability that this has given me to create a new relationship with many people in our congregation at large. There are certain things I think that it's kind of poignant as a physician to be able to talk about in the context of this discussion. There are certain truths, actually, that the body nerve endings can't really experience pain and pressure in the same way at the same time. You might know this from if you got a small burn on your thumb, your instinct tends to be to grab your thumb and press on it. And so that's a quick way to relate to the idea that you can't really feel pain and pressure at the same time. I think of fear and curiosity as the same. It's hard to feel fear. It's hard to feel scared of what's in the closet. If you're curious about what's in the closet, it's hard to simultaneously feel fear and curiosity at the same time. And so one thing I would really encourage people who are feeling afraid right now is to think about, what can you feel curious about? That could be anything from curiosity of digging in deeper in your own spiritual awareness and your relationships. It could be curiosity about gardening, which you've never taken up before, which some people might call a distraction, and that's okay if you're replacing fear with curiosity. It's hard to imagine how that will not serve you. Other ways that I deal with fear, another poignant piece to bring in from the medical side is that Although the relationship between the mind and body is something that we don't completely understand, there are certain examples that we have in medicine of how extraordinary the ability of the mind's connection with the body is. I have personally seen, I'll never forget, a case as a medical student where I watched dye being injected into the vein of somebody who, it was a contrast study to understand how the heart was beating. And you could see how this person who had experienced a very sad and traumatic event actually had a portion of their heart not beating in the same way in the lower part that we call the apex and functioning correctly. And this is actually a well-described entity. But to watch this, on a camera loop and understand the power between the mind's thinking and this organ that beats day in and day out, whether or not you're thinking about it, was really extraordinary. And I think that when we talk about meditation at Unity Temple, that's exercising a principle which we understand a lot more about. Everybody says breathe and count to 10 when you're nervous or scared. And I believe that that's because the ability to regulate our breathing, which we actually do have more control over than our heartbeat, really can slow us down. I think we accept in the medical world quite easily that being startled or scared will cause you to flush or your palms to sweat, your eyes to dilate, your heart to beat more rapidly. But we don't often think enough about the counter side of those effects. And so if you can do the opposite to yourself of startling yourself, if you can do the opposite, and whether that's approaching with curiosity, whether that's breathing with mindfulness meditation, we actually do know that there are effects on the brain that are very visible on scanning. And I think many people in our congregation also will speak to the powerful ability of what our minds can do for our bodies when we kind of harness that back in and take it back under our control.
Very interesting. Thanks for sharing that. There was this is just shifting a little bit on our subject, but there was a story in the Bible where the Roman soldiers had gone into a small town and they demanded that the residents of that town put them up and feed them. And every day the soldiers had to go out to their point of observation to make sure the enemy wasn't coming. And they had a lot of gear to carry. They not only had the provisions, but they had their armor. So they had forced the people to carry their armor, and it was about a mile. Well, the people got disgruntled, not only because they were living in their home and eating their food, but now they had to work for them as well. And everything just started to disintegrate in regards to the environment, the emotional environment of the village. So they went to Jesus and said, what are we going to do? How can we get rid of these guys? And Jesus said, when I first heard this, first of all, it was in confirmation in 7th grade. When I heard it, I thought, Jesus is not really that bright of a guy, because what he said made no sense to me. He said, if they force you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. In other words, just don't do the mile that they're forcing you to do. Do another mile willingly and joyfully. So when the townspeople did this, the soldiers recognized it, and they began reacting with kindness, and everything began to calm down. And pretty soon the soldiers moved out of the homes, they quit drawing on the people's provisions, and everything became harmonious. And right now, I believe that's something that all of us have to take on. We have to go the extra step to be kind to people that we know or that we don't know, and allow things to be forgiven instantly. If somebody cuts me off in traffic, I used to pound on the horn long after the people were gone. It just irritated me. Now it's just a pass. Let it go. I don't have to engage myself in anything, once again, that is going to weaken me, which is harsh, negative feelings.
I couldn't agree more. I think it's a beautiful example for this time. I think that, I don't know that coronavirus will be kinder. I don't know what will make it kinder or worse, honestly. I think we're still learning. But I think that, the public health side of me hears that message and is immediately thinking about shelter-in-place orders, and that if you're asked to stay home for 1 more week, it's okay to stay home for 2. I think that this is a period of giving grace. to ourselves, to people around us who are scared. It still is startling to me to consider that there are people who maybe think that this is a hoax. I can assure you from the medical side that while I'm more on the side of research with COVID-19, my colleagues and friends who I've known for decades now who have been more hands-on with patients, this is most certainly not a hoax. And we have a lot ahead of us as we move into reopening. But I think that we'll learn, and I think it's okay to go slowly. I think it's okay to take extra cautions. And I think it's okay to give grace, not only to ourselves, but to our leaders, whether they're supervisors at your employment that are trying to figure out how to do this right, whether there are spiritual leaders who are trying to figure out how to best meet our needs as a community while keeping everybody safe. We're all learning. And if you think back to a human being learning, nobody learns how to get up and walk on a first try. I think we're gonna learn a lot as we reopen. I heard something very poignant from one of the leaders of one of the infectious disease societies, and it was just that a simple microscopic virus brought humanity to its knees. And I think that there's a lot of ways to think about that. You could think of bringing us to our knees in prayer and searching inwardly and with each other about how to rise up again stronger and better. And you can think about bringing us to our knees and getting up and learning how to walk again and walk together and do it better.
I think that's the most important thing we can do coming out of this, is to realize that there isn't a separation between us. You know, we all live on one earth, one planet. We all have a brain and a heart and organs. And we all have the same life system, which is the DNA system. We all have the same moment right now. Every single person in this world, 8 billion of them, are all sharing this moment. And that doesn't leave room for separation. We need to move beyond any sort of resistance or hostility towards other people and really claim our oneness, because that's going to make us through. The attitude that I had in the beginning of this was one of fear, and it was fighting the coronavirus, which I hear quite often when people are stricken with cancer. I'm going to fight this, I'm going to fight this. But now it's more or less adapting to the lifestyle the coronavirus demands, which is with concern and care, but I don't have to battle it. I can do more of a defensive measure where I can go about my life the best I can under the conditions and don't have that constant sense of doing battle.
I couldn't agree more.
Do you meditate?
I do.
Would you like to meditate now?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to take a moment to meditate. If you're at home, relax in a comfortable seat. We're going to have a picture of a burning candle on the screen, and that burning candle is something you can focus on. And as you do, your breathing will begin to slow down, your thoughts and feelings will begin to become fewer and fewer, and we can really move into that place within where we find true comfort and a true sense of calmness. So take a deep breath, and as you watch the candle on the screen, just breathe in and out slowly. Breathing in and hold it for just a moment or two. Breathing out. And breathing in. Breathing out. Life is a process of choices. Every day we make choices. We choose to do this, we choose to do that. We can choose to get fearful, we can choose to be peaceful. We can choose to treat people nice, we can choose to treat people badly. It's all about choices. When we bring our consciousness, especially the spiritual consciousness, to every situation and circumstance, we can choose what is not only best for us, but best for everybody involved. So we choose to be happy, we choose to be helpful, we choose to be hopeful as we move on, living our lives day by day, hour by hour, and moment by moment. now move into the silence. From our meditative state. And as we do so, we feel a relief that has come over us. We feel strong. We feel positive. We're ready to move on with this day and make the most of it. And as we do so, we experience a peaceful mind, a peaceful heart, and a peaceful spirit. And with that, we say, thank you, God, and amen.
Imagine there's no heaven. It isn't hard to do. Nothing to kill or die for, and no religion too. Imagine all the people living for today. Imagine there's no country and no religion too. Nothing to kill or die for. It isn't hard Imagine all the people living life in peace. You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one. Oh, imagine no possessions. I wonder if you can. No need for greed or hunger. A brotherhood of man. Imagine all the people living life in peace. You might say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will live as one. We will live as one. We will live as one. We will live as one.
Well, once again, I thank you for being here today. Part of the service is to express our gratitude for the many different things in our lives. And I express our gratitude for your support, for your financial support. The best thing you can do for Unity Temple at this point is to become an ambassador. Very simple. You go to our website, unitytemple.com, and there is a place where you can sign up. Now, what that does is you agree to recurring giving, which means you set it up with a credit card or a checking account, and once a week or twice a month or once a month, it is automatically sent to Unity Temple. The beautiful thing about this is you get to set whatever amount you want. It's the consistency that helps us, and it saves us money. Oftentimes when we think about gratitude, we think about ourselves and all the things we have, but seldom do we think about nature, about all the other species in the world. But all the trees, the flowers, the rivers, the streams, the mountains, the blue skies, everything is precious. And when we take a close look at nature, we discover that within nature, there is a sense of harmony. All of nature does get along, except for, of course, when it comes to survival, which is food and primarily territory. But other than that, they are peaceful. So we now look at some of our precious faces from nature.
my sword and shield. Down by the riverside, ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. Ain't gonna study war no more. I ain't gonna study war no more. 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 I ain't gonna study war no more.
Special thank you to our musicians, Clay Kirkland, Jim Mayer, and Millie Nottingham. This concludes our service. We'll now end with the prayer for protection and the peace song. The light of God surrounds me. The love of God enfolds me. The power of God protects me, and the presence of God watches over me. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Please join us in the peace song.